So now we have our panelists. Maybe I could start with asking a simple questions to our respected physicians here. Any one of you has been any experience with generics while you're treating your patients?
I have some experience that two of my patients have actually used the copy drugs that they brought from India. So I suppose that's considered generic, okay? And so, I mean, my personal view on generic is that it is unavoidable. So every day I'm prescribing so many drugs, I can tell you that maybe 80–90% were actually generics, okay? So this is a trend you cannot avoid. Now the problem is that we have to make sure that all the generics that we are prescribing are as good as the original product. So that's the bottom line we have, okay? Regardless of the cost, okay? The cost, this one may be 30% cheaper, that one may be 40% cheaper. That's not a problem to me. The problem is that you have to make sure that they are as good as the original product. Okay? Then it's up to the hospital to choose whatever brand, because I'm going to tell the patient that don't worry, because we have a procedure that we assess the quality. The quality is all right. This pill is equivalent to the original product. And in fact, in some of my patients, it's not having CML, but with other diseases, okay? Like, for example, diabetes. They'll be interested to tell you that, you know, doctor, every time I come back, you know, say 3 months, 4 months, every 4 months, we got a different colors of pills. Exactly true, because there's some old, you know, these diabetes drugs, okay? The company is, you know, sourcing the drugs from different suppliers. And every time the color is different. This time it's green, next time it's white, and the next time it's yellow. It doesn't really matter, because as long as the disease is under good control, the product is, the quality is good, the condition is under control, that's fine with me. That's what I'm trying to discuss with my patients. Okay.
So in your particular case, where you have patients who taking copies drugs, so I mean, what do you do? I mean, do you check the drugs yourself, or you like get the drugs checked by your pharma department, or like getting the health authority to check for it?
Now, obviously, that kind of copy drug is not being approved in Hong Kong. Okay. So this is that the one, you know, because at the time, so imatinib is still under patent, you know, provided by the drug company. So this patient, they actually have some friends, they go to, you know, India, and then somehow they get a supply to the patient. So there's nothing I can do about us checking the quality of the copy drug. But what we can do is that we monitor the patient as if the patient is taking the sort of original product, and make sure the patient is having a good response. If the patient responding well, I mean, this, I will ask them to continue treatment. If the patient is not responding well, then I'll discuss with them to switch. You know, if the patient failed to respond to the drug, then obviously, like other treatment, we may have to consider, like for example, a second generation TKI. Of course, for that particular patient, he has another option, change to the original product. Okay, since we don't know whether the product he's consuming is actually equivalent to the original one. So there's always an option.
So you cannot stop them from taking those drugs anyway, right?
Now, the key issue is like this. So every time I see a patient, okay, with CML, okay, I give him a prescription, say for example, imatinib 400 milligram. It's up to the patient to take the prescription to get it from, say, a community pharmacy or from the hospital pharmacy. We have no control over what product they are using. Okay, that's the bottom line. Okay, so as long as the patient find a product, of course, if he bought the product in Hong Kong, that will already be approved by the health authority. That's some guarantee over here. But we will not check every pill. Okay, give me a sample. Let me check if it's okay. I only monitor my patient. I don't monitor the pills. Okay, that's the reality.
Oh, maybe the system in Hong Kong is that doctors prescribe, and I mean, like in many Western countries, maybe in some Asian countries, the situation is slightly different, where the patients get the treatment from the hospitals where they've been treated. Like in Malaysia, whatever that's been prescribed need to be taken from the pharmacies downstairs where they could collect their drugs. So there is no chance that this patient could get drugs from other company. I mean, yeah. Prof. Sangsuri, do you have any experience with copies drugs? Or if you don't have, what do you do if, let's say, you came across with patients that taking generics?
I haven't come across. So
You,
I will do exactly the same thing like Dr. Wong said. But in Thailand, I think we are lucky because the majority of patients get imatinib from GPAP, and they are too poor to buy the copy from India. So we don't have that problem. In 2018, the patent is expired. So we will know more about that. But I don't think there is much that the patient advocates can do, because let's say if one company import the generic form and get it registered in the country, and if the medication is much less expensive than Gleevec, then it's going to be, included in the hospital pharmacy. And especially the patients under the civil servant, they are going to get the generic form first because the government is paying for the medication. They will make us prescribe the generic form, not the original form. Patients in the GPAP will luckily be getting the original form. Now, for the social security patients, I bet they're going to get the generic form also because the social security office is buying the medication for the patient.
Although I mentioned that my patients are free, actually after the prescription, they are free to get the drug from anywhere, like going back to the community pharmacy to get the drug.
even the online?
Sorry?
Even online?
Well, online is even no control. They go online, they go to the website to order whatever. I mean, there's absolutely nothing we can do about that. But I'm talking about if they get the prescription, they can certainly go to, say, I want to go to my pharmacy, in my sort of, in my area to buy it. I mean, this is, at least for Gleevec, it's allowed, okay? Or imatinib is allowed.
So for that interest, maybe, okay, the question is who holds the responsibility to make sure that the quality is good? So if I could ask Pelin, maybe you have worked, because all this, the processing of drugs that comes into any country will go through pharma authority. So maybe you have something to share from the Malaysian experience?
Okay, so basically if there's any company who would like to put in application for generics, it has to go through our NPCB, which is a National Pharmaceutical Control Bureau. But of course, as I mentioned earlier, it's almost the same as the drug development journey, whereby instead of the clinical trial results, they have to show some sort of bioequivalent results. And actually, bioequivalence, of course, it is just an so-called a projection, because we actually do not do an extensive clinical trial on even human subjects. We are using even healthy subjects rather than in clinical trials we may be using the patients themselves, right? So really, I think as the trend goes, because the need of some treatment, but it's because of cost, we will take into a very balanced decision whether if this drug would have caused have shown some sort of efficacy and bioavailability in terms of graft, then it should have no excuse that it won't be effective. So we will actually go and open up the gate. However, I must say that this approval process is not short. In fact, for Malaysia, for a generic drug to be taken in is about at least 5 to 7 years. Okay, and having said that, I just want to point out a few points. Generic drug is not counterfeit or fake drugs. Of course, this is two different categories of drugs. Generic drug that has been approved by a regulatory body of certain country would have gone through the safety and efficacy results application. Counterfeit drug, if they were to buy outside, is beyond our control, and this is what worries us. Of course, the more generics in the market now is now taken advantage by the illegal people to produce copies. Copies that has not gone through trials, in this case, will be the bioequivalent studies. So that is actually one thing that we really have to be more alert. Yes, we may think that some generic in this case may be okay, available in the market, we can probably buy because we thought it's already been approved by the country. However, we need to check whether it is an authentic generic. Okay, and second thing I thought I should point out is some generics are actually made by big pharmaceutical companies, you know. Even Novartis, they have their own subgroup that produces generic drugs. So not all generic drugs, if I can be, you know, pointing out, you know, yeah, they are not all from unreliable sources. Some big companies now, they do have some generic products under their companies too.
Yeah, thank you.
So
Yeah,
I have two questions for you and a comment. I was going to say exactly what you just pointed out, which is that I think the fear that we have is some of these companies we don't know. And so is there any body or website that ranks companies in the quality of their products in quality control? How would we know?
Okay, actually every country will have their database online. Just like US, the FDA is actually having a website whereby you can actually trace by keying in the registration number of that product into the website and to see whether it's actually listed under their approved generics. Actually, generic drug has its list for each country. Even for Malaysia, if you look at the packaging itself, it will have some code that starts with MAL followed by 8 digits number. And if you were to key in this you know, registration number, you can actually check on the website itself or the regulatory.
But my question is not about the drug, but about the company. How do I know that company is reliable? If some company I never heard of.
And I would like to mention also, before the approval is given, they will do some inspection. So that inspection will actually be a spot check, sort of. It's a random one without, you know, a scheduled time. So many a time when they do inspection, it's an actual production situation.
I think just to supplement that, like in Hong Kong, I think most countries also do the same thing, is that they will check if the drug company has got a GMP.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Good
GMP,
manufacturing.
good manufacturing practice.
It's a certification.
Yes, it's a certification that they sort of fulfill a kind of a good practice. Then they give in a GMP label. So like in Hong Kong, whatever drugs that we got, we make sure that the factory or the company that produced the drug has got a GMP kind of certificate. That can be a company located in Hong Kong, and then the Hong Kong Health Authority actually give that company a GMP. That is at least a guarantee of the sort of quality of that company. So if there's a company coming to knock our doors and saying that we have a very cheap version of this kind of things, okay, do you have a GMP? No, we don't. You're out.
Do you know if other countries are the same? All countries?
Inspection
I think
should be
GMP
one
is
of the
quite universal,
criteria,
right?
yes.
Yeah, it's a universal certificates that required by.
Because, for instance, in Latin America, we have had this issue of the copies coming into the countries for many years now. And there is no control, no quality control by the government. The government just buys whatever is cheaper without controlling any kind of quality.
Well, so certainly there's some differences between individual countries. As far as I know, at least most of the country in the Asia Pacific region, the health authority does look into the quality of the product, including the efficacy, safety, or in other words, the bioequivalence or bioavailability data carefully. Make sure that this product is sort of comparable with the original product before they give them a license to sell the drug. That means approved label. Okay, so there may be 10 companies going to knock the door of whatever country's health authority saying that now we're all producing imatinib, okay, please give me a license. And of course, the individual health authority will look into all the application carefully using their own criteria, okay, because they are the gatekeeper. Okay, and then they will approve. Okay, I approve drug A, drug B, drug C, but not D, because the company doesn't give me the enough data. Okay, they will ask for further data. So until they're satisfied, then they will got the approved label. And so now this drug can be sold in this country. Now, and then the second part is that whoever who buy the drug, okay, he will probably maybe the hospital, maybe the clinic will then select among the list that has been approved. And then they find the ones that they want, okay? Most of the time for the public healthcare system, it's probably the cheapest one.
Okay, so in the end, what can a patient support group do? Because most of this quality checking is done by hopefully by the health authority. Pat, you have any point?
I think that the information that's posted in the CML Advocates website is important. I think we have to continue, as there's more and more generics approved in different countries, to feed the information to the CML Advocates network, and at least to publish the information that we have, what generics are being approved, what perhaps we will open some site where each country can put comments or anecdotes of what's happening in their country, because the more public you can make the information, the better. And I think already there are drugs being used in Asia Pacific that are not on the website. So if you have drugs approved in your country that are not on the website, let's make sure that we continue to find information and feed the information. And I think that that's a really good thing that we can do. And I only wanted to mention that I live in the United States. My situation, my own exposure to generic drugs is through my children that take some drug that is generic, and the physician gives me the prescription. I go to some pharmacy. One day they give me a red pill, tomorrow give me a yellow pill. And I, because I'm an advocate, I said, no, I want the same thing you gave me last time. And sometimes they have to order, and sometimes the insurance companies say no, because that one is cheaper and now we bought the other one. So then I have to shop around and be a very informed consumer. So we have to become more informed consumers, I think, as this evolution is happening in our country. So there's some things you can do. You just have to know what is available, what you can do, and ask and push and make your voice loud.
Yeah.
Just one message I want to to make sure that you all receive is that generic drug is not really something evil. Okay? Remember, generic drug, to me, is something good. Because without generic drug, our system cannot survive. Okay? Because you need to control the cost so that you can save some money to use newer drugs. Okay? That's how we survive and how we can develop our healthcare. But what we need to do is that we all have the responsibility to make sure that the generic has given us the same effect as the original product. Okay? So from a patient's perspective, you need to sort of understand in your country what's the approval system. Okay? So how can your health authority make sure that the generics that they are bringing in would have the same effect as the original product? Okay? If you find, and you have to voice out, okay, this factory or the regulatory authority that they have to do the job right, okay, to make sure to safeguard, because they're the gatekeeper, to safeguard the effect of the drugs and also the benefit of the patients. So in other words, you also need to monitor the health authority, how they're doing. Okay? The other thing is that when the generic really comes, okay, so as I've mentioned, there are some patients always report to me that, every time I got a new bag of drug is different color. I told them, don't worry. I suppose they are actually have the same active ingredient, they are supposed to be the same effect. If you take a new batch of drug, you find something wrong, you have to report to us. And in fact, in Hong Kong, all the public hospital pharmacy will actually help to collect all this sort of information. So if they find that the drug somehow go home has got some problem, they can take back to the pharmacy, report to them, and then they will give you replacement, and also they will report this problem up to the sort of head of the office who is actually doing all this procurement. And so this is a kind of a feedback loop. Okay, you give a feedback to the system. The system will sort of help to correct the issues. So I think everyone, like clinician, patients, pharmacists, those who are doing ordering process, all those who are actually assessing all this sort of giving the registration, giving the approval, they all have a role, and we all have to work together. And so at every level, monitor the use of all these generic, and sometimes it's not only the generic, but even the original product, the branded product may sometimes have trouble. Sometimes batch by batch, okay, 100 batch is okay, but the 101 batch has got a problem. Okay, so don't think generic is worse. Don't think generic are cheap things, okay? They are not going to be used. No, they can be good, okay? In fact, there are some large pharmaceutical company who actually set up a section to produce a lot of these generic. They are good. But we are worried about some, maybe we're worried about some quality issue, maybe some companies not up to standard, okay? So in that case, we need to sort of monitor and sort of report any problems.
So I guess...
Right, I mean, I just want to say is, we understand, we all like generics, we like cheaper drugs. If Novartis made a generic with Sandoz tomorrow, no more problem. We're all happy. We put it, if that's what we're getting, we're all very happy. But we don't know the quality of these drugs, and that's, I think, because we don't know, we're scared, so.
I think
Listen, all countries might not have a same type of quality check. That is important. Like in our country, the generics that are made, there are good big pharma companies that make generics in India. At the same time, there are pharma companies running in small places who make generic and sell it to the to the medical stores. And as the end consumer, we don't know what is the quality of that drug there. You're not going to the manufacturing place. You're not seeing the process that it is being manufactured under. So if the country doesn't have a proper monitoring system, it becomes a big problem. The side effects would be much higher.
Then it's actually the role of the patient advocacy group to actually tell the government, you have to do something more.
So we as advocates, if we can form sort of not a monitoring body, but we keep an eye on all the things that are happening, at least with the particular drugs that we are associated with, it would be helpful.
That's why I think the CML Advocates website is the best website to feed information now.
Yeah, I guess the homework that you have to do now is to, when you go back to your own country, I mean, get to know who's your health authority or pharma authority that looking after this, especially the quality of the drugs, so who has the gatekeeper of your medications. I think the other thing is that the fear is heightened or even pronounced in the CML community is because the drugs is life-saving. I mean, people don't mind taking any non-original drugs for fever or like some mild infections, but I think the problem is more pronounced in CML community is because of the life-saving drugs. So I have not heard anything from Dr. Ross. Maybe Australia is generic resistant? No?
So the patent will end quite soon in Australia, but there hasn't been any decision made about what will happen. So I think, so currently we can choose between imatinib, nilotinib and dasatinib as first-line therapy. We can choose any of the three drugs. And I think that will continue. It's likely that we will not be forced to use a generic imatinib. And I think we have quite a strict regulatory process, which means that any generic drug marketed in Australia is highly likely to meet international standards. So I'm not worried about that. I think the important thing is that when generics come, you want only one or two versions of imatinib so that you don't have a confusing mess of different drugs to deal with. If you just had one generic, then you would get to be very familiar with that drug and you would see from treating many patients that it was consistent. So from my point of view, you want to deal with a smaller number of generics as possible, but I'm not afraid of them. I think that it's a good thing. As Raymond said, we can't cope with the cost of drugs with patent protection. The whole system survives because the cost of drugs comes down when the patent expires.
Okay. Yeah, Pelin, you got something to say?
Yeah, you're just talking about life-saving drugs versus those drugs that you can get just over the counter. I think as patient advocate, perhaps when you meet your patient, when they bring their medication, you can actually ask them how did they get access to this drug. So if I could categorize, imatinib should go under life-saving drug. So supposing their consultation and all that should go under a hematologist, a known hematologist engaged, and then you get from a reliable source, which is through prescription. Let's just say it's in a hospital, through the hospital pharmacy. So maybe I can just give you a very brief picture. What happens in our hospital pharmacy? Of course, there is a switch of brand over time. That is, of course, authentic generic we are talking about, right? So before we do the switch, there will be a ethics committee within the hospital that will be informed, and they will actually go through a lot more paperwork, articles and all that. They study about the generic drug before coming into a final discussion to say, okay, perhaps we can look into it. However, the last final safety net here is usually before we switch, we will get some samples and we will only try on a small subgroup. Okay, so if the subgroup has problem using the generic that we may want to switch to, and therefore that switching will not happen. So of course then another generic will come in and another sample will be required by the hospital. So the switching is not really happening as and when we like, you know. It really goes through a lot of processes, different committees, and it would have been tested first in this case, yeah.
Okay, I think that would sum up everything of our discussions today.